Hi, it's Professor Brew again. Okay, so as you remember, the first time we got together was looking at how to sharpen pencils. And so I have my 3 sharpened pencils here, okay? I really want you to have your toolbox filled with all of your pencils and your charcoal pencils sharpened in this way. This is super important because these are your tools, and there's nothing worse, than being that person that shows up on the job and has to keep running out to their truck to get stuff. I mean, what a waste of time. So you want to have this ready to go. I've got my sharpener with me, my eraser with me, and my little container to put my lead in if I do need, if I break every single one of my pencils and I need to sharpen, then I've got to stop and sharpen. You really don't want to have to do that because it takes you out of your zone. It interrupts your thinking patterns and your brain flow. So you really want to have all of your tools ready to go every single day. All right, for class. So then we also went over the 5-step value scale. So now you're going to get to see the 5-step value scale at work. So we have the center light, which is this lightest color. We have the halftone light, which is this value right here. I don't mean to say color, value or tone. We have a mid-tone, which is right now for me because I'm using the mid-tone gray paper. I'm going to use that for my mid-tone. We have the core dark cast shadow, which is here, and then at the very end, the darkest. And then we have our reflective light, which is right here. It's darker than these 3 tones. The mid-tone the mid-tone, the halftone light, and the center light. But it's lighter than the core dark, and that's important because this is going to represent the color that bounces off of the wall or the floor or the ceiling back onto the object and creates a little bit of a reflective light. Okay. So I'm going to demonstrate shading a sphere. So I'm just going to see here what I'm doing. I'm going around and around in my paper, and it looks like a little hamster in his wheel. He's sort of going around and around and not really going anywhere. But actually I am going somewhere. I'm visualizing as I'm going around making my circle. Okay? Circles can be very hard to draw. They can be wonky or flat or something. So I'm ghosting this. This is what this is called, is ghosting. This circle before I put my pencil to my paper. And now I'm putting my pencil to my paper. Notice how I'm holding my pencil. And notice that I'm drawing with my whole arm. Okay, you can't really do, there's lots of different ways to draw. You can use your wrist and your fingers. You can use only your elbow. But in this case, I ghosted my circle or my sphere. Actually, it's a circle because it's a flat shape now. It doesn't have any value on it. And I have a very, very light line. I want to keep it that way going all the way around. So there it is right there. Okay, so this is sort of my gesture, okay? All right, so I want to talk about a couple of things because we are going to try to create the illusion of a 3-dimensional form on a flat surface, a 2-dimensional surface. And I'm doing this from my imagination. So I have to decide one thing, where the light is coming from. So I'm going to use little arrows. So this arrow right here, you can see, is flat on the bottom. But if I turn this arrow, this is my light here, L-I-G-H-T, my light source, okay? So if I turn it like this, okay, it's starting to go away from me because this bottom is starting to come up and I can see underneath it. Okay, if I have it like this, then the point is facing completely away from me. So it's sort of like this. I first drew like this, then I drew like this, then I drew like this. So you can see that that light is turning away from me. So now I can go this way, okay, and then I can come back this way again. So these are different directions of light. Okay, so I want my light to be coming, to be sort of maybe over my shoulder and shining so that the center light is going to be about here. So that means it's going to be kind of out here like this. It's down too far. So I'm going to come back here like this. I'm going to open up my light source like that. Okay? So as this is coming in, it's going to be shining right about here. Okay, so this takes a little intuition, but it's all about this little bottom guy and where it's going. So this area right here is going to be my center light right here. Okay, this point. And it's gonna, that light is gonna radiate out, right? It's gonna be radiating out this way. So what I have to imagine is I have to imagine the secondary contour lines of this sphere as it goes around. So these lines are coming around like this. I got the center light, and they're going around like that. And you have to imagine that it's going all the way around. So if you see these lines are on the other side, and they're actually lines that you wouldn't ordinarily see, okay, as it goes. So that's called drawing through. It's just being able to see what's behind it. And now, even though I haven't added any tone or any values to this, it's already starting to look a little bit three-dimensional. This high point here, right here, the highest point of the curve is called the apex. Okay, so that's important. Those are all kind of important things to know. So the highest point on a curve is the apex. Okay, and the center point is the brightest area of light. And as this light curves around, look at this, see? These lines right here that go across like this are that's exactly what they're doing. They're crossing, okay? But you can see as it curves away from me, right around in here, this area right here is where it's going to start getting shaded on this side, and it's going to be light on this side. So now I've established my shaded side and my light side. Okay, shaded side and light side. Here's the light side. I'm going to use my kneaded eraser to lift these lines here and reestablish my boundary for my sphere. And then this is going to be my shaded side. So I'm going to take the side of my pencil this way, and I'm going to shade that in. So now I have two values, two tones, two values. So if I ever ask you to draw using two values, one value is the color of the paper, and the other value is the shadow. And this is now the shadow shape of this object. So we've got value and we've got shadow shape. The turning of the shadow at this point, right here, let me make sure that you see that, is called the terminus. So I'm going to make a little line, come back here, and we're going to call this the terminus or terminator, if you will. Okay? So you can think of, what is it, Arnold Schwarzenegger in the Terminator? And I want to keep these edges soft. And the reason that I want to keep them soft is because these edges are receding from me. So I never want there to be a dark line. Remember how we talked about dark lines next to a value can make it look lighter? So we're going to keep that all the same there. Now I've got this circle, so notice how I'm starting to come around this way. Look at this. Okay, and I'm just drawing an ellipse, and that is going to be my shadow right there. And I'm shading that in the same color as my sphere. Okay, so now this is where we've got the center light, or the center point, which is the brightest, center light. Then we've got our half-tone light, our mid-tone, our core dark, and cast shadow, and our reflective light. So this light hits here. It is blocked by the apex of this curve here, okay, and it bounces onto the table and back onto the object, causing a little bit of a reflective light. So this area in here is going to be slightly lighter than any of this up here. So the core dark isn't just a dark stripe that goes all the way around. There's a science to how light travels. So here's my value scale. I got to have that near me. And then I'm going to come back in here and I am going to begin to add value. So you notice that I'm lifting all of the gray that I put in here because you never want to mix white and gray. Maybe when you get to be experts, but in our class, we are always going to leave a space of the color of the page between our gray tones and white tones. Don't mix white and gray. Okay, so I'm going to start with my darker. I don't know why I start with dark. I just do. And I know that as this light travels and here, and goes around, and then it comes to here. This is my terminator line. I'm going to have a little bit of a darker reflective light tone in between as it transitions from here to here. But back in here, this is going to be dark. And then I know that as this bounces back up, this area right in here is going to be a little bit lighter. So I'm going to go a little bit darker in here, and I'm going to blend it out. So there's going to be like dark, and then it's going to gradually blend out. Now this is the beginning of chiaroscuro when you're doing this kind of blending, but it's going to be the most dark right in here. I'm holding this up hopefully so that you can see it. I keep turning it so I can see it. I'm going to keep this my reflected light area, okay? But then I have a core dark right in here. This is the occlusion, okay, from the shadow. And that gets lighter as it goes out. The closer the shadow is to the object, the darker it is. So it's going to be a core dark, cast shadow, right? Cast shadow. And if you notice, the cast shadow has a hard edge to it. All cast shadows. This object is blocking the light from here, and when an object blocks the light, it creates a cast shadow, and a cast shadow is always hard-edged. As the shadow goes further away from the object, the edge softens out here. Curve that a little bit. Now you're starting to see that come to life. And what I mean by come to life is that it is looking more three-dimensional. So you notice that it's a building up of the layers, and these layers will eventually become your 10-step value, but I really want you to stick to 5. I want you to stick to your core dark, cast shadow, which are going to be the same color, your reflected light. Now, the light, as it travels across the form, becomes a form shadow. So the edge of a form shadow is almost always soft. Because see, this no object is blocking this. It's a gentle gradation of the light traveling across this object. So there's my reflected light down there. Now it might be a little bit too light. And it's going to get darker here, closer to the shadow. Okay. Now, the pièce de la résistance, okay, is going to be your edge control, and that is where you're going to add your darks. So here's my edge. I'm going to put an edge on here. Nice hard edge, and let it get soft as it goes out. Nice hard edge. You don't want to have a line. You want to make sure that that's blended out. There's my core dark. My core dark gets lighter as it goes towards the edges and as it goes toward the light source. Very soft, keeping the edges soft, but maybe up here I might add a little bit of an edge, and down here certainly I'm going to add an edge. I want to darken that a bit. Okay. Notice I'm always holding my pencil far back. I'm never really choking up on my pencil because I'm using a shading technique, and I want to be able to use my whole arm so that I can get this done a lot more quickly. And now I'm going to go in for my center light, which we've already established is right here. I want to get rid of any gray area here. So I'm going to have my center light, but I'm starting with my halftone light, and I'm gently bringing that out. Notice I'm leaving the color, the mid-tone here, and then in the middle, I have a highlight. So just a little tiny bit. You don't want a lot, and you want to blend it out. Blend it out. Now, this is going to be harder, edgier, or have more of an edge to it if it's a glass or a metal. But this is a nice soft, like a baseball or a ball of yarn or something like that. Okay. Oh, that looks fine. Now I'm going to take my pencil again, and I'm going to put a little bit of a reflective light right on this edge. Right on this edge. And oftentimes in class you'll hear me call it the 10% value. Okay? And there's your beautifully shaded sphere. So this is what you're going to be practicing in your sketchbook. And then you are going to label your terminator or your terminus, which is right here. You're going to label center light. You're going to label half-tone light, mid-tone, core dark, cast shadow, and your reflected light, and your occlusion. Okay? So thank you very much. I hope this has been helpful, and I'll see you in class.